So at the top of the hour, we'll get going.
Sounds good.
All righty. I'll give you a heads up when I start letting people in. I think I'll start letting people in just a couple minutes here, and start at noon sharp. All right. I'll be right back. Hey there, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Couple minutes to the top of the hour here. We have a lot of RSVPs, a lot of folks in the process of logging in. We do have a lot of content to cover today, though, so we're going to get going promptly at noon. Stand by.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stuart Wallace, and I'm the Business Development Officer for Interior Federal. We're going to go ahead and start this promptly because we respect everyone's time, and Michael has a lot of information to cover. I'd like to start by introducing Michael Holstrom, who is our Wealth Advisor for Interior Federal Wealth Management. Michael has vast knowledge, strong integrity, and nearly 2 decades of experience serving thousands of clients. He specializes in providing comprehensive financial planning, wealth protection, and asset management service for individuals and small businesses. The majority of Michael's time is spent working with current and former federal employees and their network of family, friends, and colleagues. He enjoys being able to relieve his clients of the stress that comes with managing finances so that they have more time and peace of mind to focus on things they most value. Understanding that every situation is unique, Michael's desire is to help the clients efficiently manage their current and future wealth and navigate the numerous financial options in a way that's tailored to their specific needs. Michael has a bachelor's degree in finance from Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota. He holds a Series 7, 63, and 66 license and life and health insurance licenses. Michael is an investment advisor representative and maintains a fiduciary relationship with his clients, holding himself to the highest ethical standards. He lives in Northern Virginia with his wife and 3 children, enjoys spending time with his family, golfing, fishing, exercise, church activities, and being a personal chauffeur for his little ones. On a personal note, I've known and worked with Michael for over a decade. I've been referring him financial referrals from federal employees and have been impressed with the level of expertise and detail, as well as his comprehensive service that he provides our members. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and thank you all for attending, and thank you for your loyal membership with Interior Federal.
All right. Appreciate you. Thanks, Stuart. Appreciate the introduction. Hello, everyone. We still have some folks in the process of logging in. I think we have 43 RSVPs here today. I'm trying to get my video started. Maybe it's hiding from me here somewhere. I hit the start video button here so you could see my face, but there we go. Okay, I've uncovered it for myself. Maybe you've been looking at me already for the past few seconds. But I am Michael Hallstrom, the wealth advisor for the credit union. My job, as Stuart was just describing, is to help our members work toward their financial goals, whatever they may be. Simply put, retirement is a big one, but we cover all those different areas of financial planning, cash and debt management strategies, investments, retirement planning, risk management strategies, protection planning, if you will, tax management, estate planning strategies. There really isn't any area of personal or household or even small business owner financial advice that we can't give you some feedback on and help with. So if any of you are interested in having a conversation about your situation, we'd love to meet with you one-on-one. But that's enough about me. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we work with members at the end of our time together, but we have just so many slides to get through because we're here to talk about managing your TSP, and there are a lot of details. So without further ado, I will jump into it. And Stuart, thanks for watching the waiting room to admit anybody that we still have logging in here. All right, so let's start out with just a little bit of a fun quiz, true or false quiz, to get us started, okay? So true or false on investments, let's say, so the average equity mutual fund investor tends to outperform the S&P 500 index. True or false? And I'm not going to have y'all answer. I'm just going to do it for us. The answer to that is false. The S&P 500 outperforms the average equity mutual fund investor. All right, next slide. True or false? In the 20 years between 2004 and 2023, the annual performance of the S&P was 7.1%. True or false? Answer to that is false. It was actually higher, 8.19% average annual return. True or false? In the 20 years ending 2015, so again, now we're jumping to in the 20 years ending in 2015, the average performance of an equity mutual fund investor was 5.35%. There's actually a typo on this last screen. I'm just realizing we just edited this presentation recently here and missed this part. So what I'm referring to in this last one for the true or false is in the 20 years ending in 2015. On that one, the S&P 500 return was actually 8.19% in the 20 years ending in 2015. So translating that into this slide, in the 20 years ending in 2015, the average performance of an equity mutual fund investor was 5.35%. The answer to that is false. It was even lower than that, 4.67%. Study from Dalbar in 2016 gave us that information. Another true or false. In the 20 years ending in 2015, the rate of inflation was 2.2%. Hot topic these days, obviously. Most of us know that it's not 2.2% anymore, right? That's actually true. So in that same 20-year time period, the inflation rate was 2.2%. So kind of making sense of all this information, right? If you take the annual return of the S&P 500, which during that time period was 8.19% average annual return, minus the actual return of real equity mutual fund investors, which was 4.67%, that's a 3.52% difference in gains missed over that time period, right? And so what's the difference of 3.52% missed on a $100,000 investment over 20 years? Okay, let's add it up. 8.19% over 20 years would have turned into, from 100,000 starting point, would have turned into 482,772. Okay, 4.67% over 20 years would have added up to 249,140 after 20 years. And so the difference between that is $233,000 by earning that extra 3.52% average rate of return that you would have gotten just by sitting on the S&P 500 index and doing nothing different for 20 years. Literally just buying the S&P 500 index and not making any changes, just keeping your head down for 20 years. And so the reason why there's a difference between the average equity mutual fund investor versus just a buy and hold strategy, which is what that is, with just buying the S&P 500 and holding it for 20 years. It's because we're getting emotional about our investments, right? The average equity mutual fund investor is trying to get in when the market's good and they're confident with things, get out when the market's not looking so good, and they're kind of chasing returns, but they're doing the opposite of what makes us money long term, which is buying low and selling high. They're kind of buying high and selling low to a certain degree, right? And we find that that's because there's a lack of a plan. There's a lack of clarity around what your investment strategy actually should be. So we're going to talk more about how to implement these things into our situation, relate it to the TSP to make sure we have a plan for that. So, and then those numbers were from 2015, right? So what's the new data? There was a big study that was done on the average equity mutual fund investor in the 20-year time period, 1996 through 2015. And so what's the new data though? And actually, over the last 20 years, the 20-year period going up to 2023, so 04 to 2023, the S&P 500 had even higher average return, 9.58%. Would have turned $100,000 into $623,000. And if you include 2023, where we had that increase in interest rates and that increase in inflation, so from 2022 to 2023, that's when inflation started to take off. The average inflation rate over that time period was 2.58%, if any of you are curious. So quick little quote, and then we'll get into some TSP content. When people get greedy, that's when I get fearful. And when people get fearful, that's when I get greedy. Who said that quote? A lot of you know who this guy is. Mr. Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. And so that's what he is doing. It's counterintuitive. A lot of investing may seem counterintuitive, but we're trying to buy low, sell high. And that's what he's trying to do, getting greedy when people get fearful and getting fearful when people get greedy, right? But studies just show that if we just let investments sit for long enough, if we just leave them alone for long enough, we'll typically make a decent rate of return, right? Okay, so preparing for retirement as it relates to the TSP. To begin with here, so just signing up isn't enough. You're automatically signed up as a FERS employee, right? You get the automatic 1% agency contribution. So if you haven't made any decisions with your TSP at all as a new federal employee, you do have a TSP. But fund selection is important. Whether you're contributing or not, that 1% automatic agency contributions going into your TSP plan, there's some money there. There's some money there to manage. And fund selection is important. Flip too fast there. So if you have not made investment decisions on your TSP plan, you're automatically invested into what is called the G fund. The G fund is the government securities fund, and it's the lowest risk, lowest long-term return type of fund. And that's on purpose that you would automatically start there, because they don't want to put you in a spot that's risky if you haven't acknowledged, what your strategy is with the TSP. But you may want more growth long-term than what the G fund will give you. So fund selection is important. Here are ways to get in touch with the TSP then. You can call the thrift line. You can go to the automated response system, open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Participant service rep is open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, international number. And then the TSP website, which is what most of you are using these days, right? www.tsp.gov. If you've been a federal employee for some years now and you haven't logged into your TSP since June of 2022, you have to set up a new login. There was a major overhaul on the TSP website in 2022, which had some glitches in it initially, some issues, but now I believe is running fairly smoothly. But again, www.tsp.gov is how you access your TSP plan. Okay, getting into it further here. Benefits and advantages of the TSP during service. So there's tax benefits, there's tax deferral, or tax deductions on contributions to the traditional plan. There's not a tax deduction on contributions to the Roth TSP, but there still is tax deferral. And then the opposite there with the Roth is you get tax-free withdrawals. We're going to talk more about that in just a little bit. It is known for being one of the lowest, if not the lowest, cost employer retirement plan in existence. Very low expenses. There's some diversified investment options. So basically the 5 main funds in the TSP plan are index funds. They're not concentrated into just one stock or one bond, for example. They're spread out. They are fairly well diversified. And then you get agency contributions. So if you're a federal employee at all, you're getting an automatic 1%. And then there are also matching contributions that you can receive if you're putting in a portion of your paycheck into the plan as well. We'll break that down further in a minute. So after service, now your options with the TSP is you can leave your funds in the TSP, continue to manage it just as you had been while you were still working. It's a portable retirement account, so you can bring it with you wherever you go next, whether that's into retirement and you want to roll it to an IRA, or if it's to another employer and you want to roll it into that new employer's plan. It's a portable retirement account. You can bring it with you. And you have a variety of withdrawal options. In 2017, Trump signed into law the TSP Modernization Act, and it was implemented in 2018. But since then, there's been a lot greater variety of withdrawal options. So while you're still a little bit limited in your withdrawal options versus like the unfettered access that you have to things in an IRA, there are more flexible withdrawal options now. We'll break that down a little bit further as well later. Okay, so types of contributions we've talked about already. The automatic agency 1% contribution. Whatever your salary is, your agency is automatically putting in 1% of your salary for you. There's the employee contribution, your portion of your contribution, and then there's the agency matching contributions. Don't say no to your money is what we tell folks. This is part of your compensation package as a federal employee. If you are not contributing to the TSP plan and getting the match, you're not receiving income that your employer wants to pay you, right? It's part of your compensation package. So the way that it breaks down is if you, over here in the left column, if you are putting in 0% of your income, agency is giving you that automatic 1%, total of 1% is going into your plan, right? If you're putting in 1%, you're getting 100% match on that first 1%. So your match is you're putting in 1%, they're putting in that automatic 1%, they're matching that 1%, you're putting in 1%, total of 3% is going into your plan, right? And so on and so forth. Down here, you get 100% match on your contributions up to your first 3% contributed, right? So if you're putting in 3%, you're putting in a total of 7% because you're getting a 4% agency contribution, 1% automatic and 3% matching, right? But then it gets a little bit weird, and we don't need to belabor this very, very long here on this slide, but for your following 4th and 5th% contributed, you're actually getting a 50% match on those percentages contributed to the TSP plan. So how it shakes out is if you're putting in 5%, that's how to get the most bang for your buck. That's how to max out the matching opportunity there. But it ends up being an automatic 1% and then a total of a 4% match, and then total of 10% of your salaries going in. So moving along here, contribution limits. So for 2024, the contribution limits for the TSP are first, your elective deferral is up to a maximum of $23,000. So you can put in a maximum of $23,000 into the TSP plan, and that applies to the combined total of whatever you're putting into the traditional and the Roth plan. So whatever you're putting into each, the total can't be more than $23,000 between the two. The annual addition limit, this is between the employer and employee the maximum contribution can't be more than $69,000 per year per year. For most federal employees, the math doesn't even work out to get even close to that maximum annual addition limit number. But that does apply. Like if you're curious at all, for if you have a spouse or loved one that has a 401k plan and their employer does contributions in addition to matching, like the employer is doing extra contributions into a 401k, for example, that annual addition limit applies there as well. So can't be more than 69,000 that's going into any retirement plan between the employer and employee. Again, doesn't apply to most federal employees. And then there's the catch-up contribution. If you're over age 50 or age 50 or older, I should say, there's the catch-up contribution of 7,500. So your personal maximum contribution, if you're at age 50 or older, is $30,500. This 23 plus the 7,500, $30,500. And then obviously you'll also be getting the 5% agency contribution as well. All right, moving along here. So traditional versus Roth TSP. How does this stuff work, right? Starting over here with the left column. Always start with the left column to read these grids, right? So the treatment of your contributions out of your paycheck. Well, in the traditional TSP, out of your paycheck, taxes are deferred, so less money is taken out of your paycheck. You're getting a tax deduction on your contributions to the traditional TSP plan, so you're being taxed less. So less money is technically taken out of your paycheck because they're not having to withhold as much for taxes because you are taxed less. If that makes sense. For the Roth, taxes are paid up front. You don't get a tax deduction on your contribution to a Roth. So more money actually comes out of your paycheck because of withholding. From a withholding standpoint, we have to adjust for the fact that you're not getting a tax deduction on the contributions to the Roth plans. You are getting benefits in exchange for that, though. So we'll talk about that too. Just remember. Transfers into the traditional TSP plan are allowed from eligible employer plans and traditional IRAs. Transfers into the Roth are allowed from Roth 401ks, Roth 403bs, and Roth 457 plans. The difference that you're seeing here is IRAs, right? You can't transfer a Roth IRA into the Roth TSP plan. If I'm missing anything in the chat box over there, give me a shout there. But all right, we'll save some questions till the end. Well, I will try to leave as much time as possible for Q&A at the end, by the way, and we'll use the chat box for that. But I'm going to fly here through the information. This is being recorded. Transfers out. So transfers out from the TSP plan are for the traditional TSP, transfers are allowed to eligible employer plans, traditional IRAs, and Roth IRAs. And then transfers out of the Roth TSP are allowed to Roth 401ks, Roth 403bs, 457s, and Roth IRAs. So you can transfer out Roth TSP money to a Roth IRA. You just can't transfer in Roth IRA money to a Roth TSP. And then withdrawals. Withdrawals from the traditional TSP. This is where the rubber meets the road for lots of us, just wrapping our heads around this first row here are like, what's the tax treatments of money in? What's the tax treatment of money out? Withdrawals, right? So the traditional TSP withdrawals are taxable as income when withdrawn. So you haven't paid taxes on that money yet. You've gotten a tax deduction on your contribution. It grows tax deferred from there going forward. And then when you pull the money out as a withdrawal, ideally in retirement, it's taxable when withdrawn. And then so with the Roth, it's the opposite of that. You have not, you've paid taxes on your contributions already, and those earnings grow tax deferred until you start taking the money out. And then when you take the money out in withdrawals, they're tax-free. But it is specifically tax-free earnings if 5 years have passed since January 1st of the year you made your first Roth contribution and you are age 59 and a half or older, permanently disabled or deceased. Okay, so that's the rule with the Roth, has to marinate for 5 years. from January 1st of the year that you started making your Roth contributions in order to get those tax-free withdrawals, right? Okay, moving along here, keeping it moving. Let's talk about the specific funds available in the TSP plan, starting with the individual funds. So we have 5 main individual funds, the G, F, C, S, and I funds. All right. And then there are the life cycle funds, which are just different compositions of the 5 main funds, and they're balanced in a way that's appropriate for people who have an objective according to a certain timeline for withdrawal. So there's the L income fund for people who are potentially withdrawing right now or want to be on the more conservative side with their risk profile with their investments. And then there's the L 2025 all the way up through the L 2065 fund. We'll talk about how to use these in just a second. So breaking down each of the individual funds first, the G fund is the Government Securities Investment Fund. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, and it consists of short-term non-marketable U.S. Treasury securities. The TSP has a sweet deal with the Treasury. They get sold Treasury bonds, exclusive, not available anywhere else. And the G fund gets a good yield because of it. But at the same time, it's not going to give you great growth long term. We live in a relative world, I suppose. So depending on what great means to you, but to me, it's not going to get the best long-term growth that we could get over the years. So you're going to get a yield, a rate of return that's similar to the 10-year Treasury yield. So if you look up the 10-year Treasury yield right now, it's at about 3.8, 3.9%, depending on what day it is. It had been all the way up 5% range, or close to it anyway. And so it's come down recently, but that's about the rate that you're getting. The historical, like modern history, historical kind of rate of return. I can give you an example. During the 2000s and the 20 teens, the rate of return was right around 2%. And the inflation rate, remember, was about 2.2%, depending on what kind of time period or cutoff you're looking at. But it's going to give you a good yield. It's not necessarily going to keep up with inflation over the long term, but the flip side to that is that it's essentially risk-free. It's not going to go down in value on you. It's stable. Okay. Next. So when does the G fund make sense? We've already talked about really no risk. If you want no risk, provides lower growth, but peace of mind, right? And especially if you're saving for short-term goals, that's when the G fund's most appropriate, especially for short-term savings goals. If you're planning on withdrawing the money soon, or you just want to be risk-free, okay? Next is the F fund. The F fund is the Fixed Income Index Investment Fund, right? What is that? Well, it's a mix of government and corporate bonds, tracks the performance of the Bloomberg Barclays U.S. Aggregate Bond Index. And if you think that's a mouthful, just wait until we talk about the I fund. So it is it has lower volatility versus the stock market. So your performance isn't going to go crazy like the stock market, but there can be significant changes in value to the F fund if interest rates change in an extreme way over a short period of time. And what we saw in 2022 was exactly that. We had an unprecedented increase in interest rates in the bond market in 2022 because of the Federal Reserve raising the federal funds rate, trying to fight inflation, right? And so the F fund in the year 2022 lost over 12% of its value, and it still hasn't come back to the level it was at prior to 2022, but it's making its way, but it's affected by interest rates, okay? To put that in perspective, just for what it's worth, the C fund was down something like 20% in 2022. So the stock market was also going down at the same time the bond market was going down in 2022. Kind of a unique year in that sense, but the stock market was down even further than the F fund, which is a bond fund, if you're tracking me so far. And just kind of illustrates the volatility. That was an unprecedented year and still didn't have as much loss as the stock market did, okay? So it has potential to earn rates above the G fund, right? We're just taking steps up here, right? G fund, low risk, F fund, some risk, better return potential over the long run, right? Next, when does the F fund make sense? Investing for current income. So a lot of bond fund investors, they call them fixed income funds as well. Fixed income is the category of investment. And the word income is there for a reason. Pays an interest rate, pays an income, so to speak, and people can use it for investing for current income. It can be used also for balancing against stock funds. So if you're just trying to create some more diversification, kind of creating a bit of an anchor, so to speak, in your investment mix, so that if the market goes down, you're less affected by it, the stock market that is, can be used for balancing against stock funds. And then also right now, if you're anticipating lower interest rates in the future, which, we'll see here in due time, whether the Federal Reserve actually lowers rates in September, very much looks like they're going to. When interest rates go down, bond prices go up. So we'll see the opposite of a 2022 potentially when interest rates start coming down. The degree to which and how fast interest rates start coming down are going to determine how much the F fund comes up in value. But if you're anticipating lower interest rates in the future, the F fund could make sense, right? Moving along here. So now we've got the C fund, which is the common stock index investment fund, probably like the flagship fund aside from the G fund, if you will, in the TSP plan. And what many of you may be familiar with is that it tracks the performance of the S&P 500 index. So that true or false quiz that we were running through in the beginning of our time together here today, where we were talking about the S&P 500 index, and the C fund's objective is literally to mirror the returns of the S&P 500 index. Okay. It comes with some market and volatility risk. It's used for long-term growth, right? And so not necessarily for short-term savings goals, but can be used for getting good long-term growth. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning of our time together. During the 20 years from 2004 up to 2023, the S&P 500 had a 9.58% average annual return. Tough to beat if you're trying to even make active decisions around investing, right? It consists of large company US stocks. So this is our 500 largest companies in the US. All right. Next fund, the S fund, is the small capitalization stock index investment fund. Consists of small and mid-sized US stocks, and it tracks the performance of the Dow Jones US Completion Total Stock Market Index. Essentially, it's just an index of small and mid-sized US stocks. Okay. Comes with market and volatility risk, just like the C fund, a greater amount of market and volatility risk, you would argue, because smaller companies are considered more risky, but also therefore higher growth potential than larger companies, and also is used for long-term growth. Now, while the S fund is typically used for higher long-term growth with added volatility versus the C fund has actually made the best return over the last 15 years. And there's all sorts of reasons that we could talk about for that. But just wanted to identify that the C fund has been the place to be over the last essentially 15 years in the market. We think that's going to change at some point. So it would be a wise idea to determine how to get more diversified if you're currently only invested in the C fund. All right. And then there's the I fund, which is the International Stock Index Investment Fund. All right. Here's the mouthful that I was talking about. Large company foreign stocks, excluding the US, tracks the performance of the MSCI EAFE index, Europe, Australia, and the Far East. And it is changing to the MSCI All Country World, excluding USA, excluding China, excluding Hong Kong, Investable Market Index in 2024. It's supposed to be by the end of 2024. I actually didn't do my search this morning to see if it's already made that change. I don't think it has made the change over to that index yet, but it is moving to that index this year. So it consists of large, mid, and small size companies in developed markets. So really no emerging markets, but excluding the US, because we are intentionally excluding the US because we have the C fund and the S fund for that, but then also excluding China and Hong Kong because of some of the things that are going on there that TSP board has determined they want to stay away from. So also comes with market and volatility risk and currency risk. So there are exchange rates between different countries' markets, right? Comes with currency risk. Can add some diversification to your investment mix. Diversification typically is a good thing. Again, spreading your money out so that you're not relying on just one thing to do well for you. And then again is used for long-term growth. So you're seeing the theme there with the stock funds, the C, S, and I funds, that they're used for long-term growth. They're risky in the sense that they're volatile. They can go up and down, but long-term, again, you leave them alone for long enough, and they'll typically yield you what we think is a decent rate of return when you look back on it years from now, right? Short-term is always questionable. So when did the stock funds make sense? Again, to maximize long-term growth, keep pace or outpace inflation. Note that a 3.5% inflation rate causes the cost of living to double every 20 years. Whatever costs $10 today, 20 years from now, if the inflation rate were 3.5% over that 20-year period, that same $10 thing would cost $20 at that time. So we essentially, life is, sometimes we live longer than we even ever expected to, right? And people retire at age 60, age 65, you live until age 80, 85, even higher than that, right? So retirement can last a long time, and we need to have a plan for how we're going to double our retirement income over the course of 20 years so that our longevity of money is in shape, intact for as long as we're going to be around. All right, moving on. So how do you choose between them? Well, the C fund is the most conservative of the stock funds. It's still volatile, but of the stock funds, which are the growth oriented funds, those are the C fund is the most conservative. We'll answer that question at the end here. Absolutely. And so the S and I offer diversification with added volatility, right? And so a common practice, if you're just trying to get as much growth as possible, but moderate that within the realm of stocks in general, someone might put the majority of their allocation into the C fund as kind of your staple position, but then add, say a third or so of your portfolio, of your overall total, into the S and the I funds to add some diversification there, potentially even some greater growth long term. But there's an even better way than that, in my opinion. So we'll talk about that next. And here we go, the L funds. So we have the L funds that range again from, I think one of my slides is missing, but anyway, I think we still got the point here. So we have the L funds that range from the L income all the way up through the L 2065 fund, right? And so the L income fund is appropriate for somebody who's currently drawing income. And all that is a breakdown. It's a composition of the 5 main funds, the G, F, C, S, and I funds, but the L income fund, because it's for somebody who's drawing current income, is going to be mostly in the G fund with some F and very little C, S, and I funds, which are the stock funds, the volatile funds. So it's going to be very conservative in its investment approach, right? And then you get into the 2025 and the 2030 fund and the 2035 fund. And then bump up here to my slide, which I'm showing you the L 2045 fund, but to illustrate my point is the L 2045 fund would be appropriate for somebody who's planning on withdrawing between the years 2045 and 2049. Okay. And the 2025 fund, which again, 2025 is next year, and even the 2030 fund are still pretty conservatively positioned. If you get up into the 2035 and the 2040 fund, now you're getting kind of more moderate in the risk profile. And they're going forward from there, 2040 all the way up through 2065. Now we're getting more aggressive with the allocation within that fund. It's mostly C, S, and I funds, and a lot of volatility along the way. But what the managers of these L funds do is every day that goes by, as we get closer to the target year, the fund gets more conservative. So it's starting to allocate more and more money toward the G and the F fund from the C, S, and I funds. And so it does it automatically for you. Some people might even argue that it's too conservative in its rebalancing approach, but it's rebalanced all the time. Okay. And it's continuously getting more conservative as you get closer to those target years. And I think these are a good idea for a lot of people to use. They can just give you a simple plan, simple approach, start packing some money away into the TSP plan according to your estimated time horizon until you're going to start taking withdrawals. Just remember that if you retire, for example, in the year 2050, if you don't really plan on withdrawing your money or the majority of your money in or around the year 2050, maybe the 2050 fund's not the right one for you, even if you're retiring in the year 2050. Maybe the 2060, maybe the 2065 fund is right for you, depending on your timeline for withdrawals, right? Which can be different than what your actual retirement date is. Keep that in mind as well. All right. Hope that makes sense the way I've gone through that. All right, so want automatic rebalancing? We'll just pick an L fund or a combination of L funds even, because you can do more than one L fund. You can even tier things out, 2060, 2050, start allocating things according to different timelines. To a certain degree, you might be doing more work than it's worth at a certain point there with using multiple L funds, but that's the concept, is you can tier things out so you don't have everything in just one L fund, recognizing that you might not plan on withdrawing all of your TSP money in the same like 5-year period of time. You know how because they go in 5-year increments, right? All right. They're automatically balanced according to your time horizon. They're subject to risk weighted upon the funds inside each portfolio. And I talked about how it gets more conservative as time goes on. All right. When do they make sense? Automatic rebalancing, avoiding mistakes. And that's the big one, is just let a professional make the how to balance your TSP decision for you and avoid mistakes that way. All right. So let's talk about the mutual fund window, right? I imagine some of you were curious if we were going to talk about that. I'm not going to get a whole lot into investment strategy and picking specific funds in the mutual fund window, but we're going to talk about what it is, and I'm going to kind of create an argument against it to a certain degree. But the mutual fund window is we're going to talk about what is it, who's eligible for it, how do you get money into it, right? The fact that it is a separate account within the TSP. What are the investment options and what are the fees? Okay. So who's eligible? How do you become eligible? Well, eligibility, it's $10,000 minimum, but no more than 25% of your total balance can be in the plan. And so based on that rule, that means you have to have at least $40,000 in your TSP to utilize the mutual fund window at all. Because again, $10,000 minimum, but can't be more than 25% of your total TSP balance. So you can't put 100% of your TSP into the mutual fund window. What are the fees? So the fees for the mutual fund window are, there's a $55 annual admin fee. There's a $95 annual maintenance fee. There's a $28 and $75 per trade fee. And then other fees and expenses specific to the actual funds that you're invested in. Not all funds are created equal. Some of the funds in the mutual fund window that are available there are more expensive. Some are less expensive. But my thing is, you can, if you're over age 59 and a half and you're eligible to do an in-service withdrawal or rollover and roll over some money to an IRA, you can get access to all these mutual funds that are available in the mutual fund window, and do it for a lower cost. Like if you're looking to pick some funds yourself, because there's still no professional manager here. There's no financial advisor that can actually manage the mutual fund window for you. So you're still kind of doing it yourself. in that sense. And if you're doing it yourself, then doing your managing yourself, rolling over to an IRA, you can get this kind of investing done for even cheaper than this. So anyway, something to consider. But if you're younger than age 59 and a half, then you're not allowed to do an in-service rollover to an IRA and take advantage of that. So if you want access to some mutual funds, which are different than the 5 main funds in the TSP plan, well, here's your way to get access to them, and here are the costs, right? Okay. So there are approximately 300 fund companies and over 5,000 funds available. Not all funds are created equal. Consider the risk and internal fees. It's beyond the scope of our conversation today to get into great detail on specific funds. But some funds are actively managed. Some funds are more passive in their approach. Some funds have a higher expense ratio. Some funds have a lower expense ratio, and the expense ratio is basically the operating cost of a mutual fund. And in the TSP, the 5 main funds, a very, very low expense ratio. In some of these funds that are available in the mutual fund window, very, very high expense ratio. Okay, so not all funds are created equal. You can't contribute directly to the mutual fund window, so you have to move, contribute to the main TSP and then move money over to it. And then you also can't loan against any money that's in the mutual fund window. So if you're looking to take the maximum loan possible against the TSP, which we would generally recommend avoiding if you can, you will have to move money back to the main TSP to loan against the full amount possible as a loan from your TSP. Okay, so TSP after separation of service. Your options after separation of service. What can you do with your TSP? Well, you can leave it and continue to defer your income. Pre-tax contributions are subject to RMD over age 73. That's going to change to over age 75 in the year, what is it, 2034? 2033. No, it's right there on my screen. So it is increasing as time goes on and people are living longer, and we're trying to delay retirement, and all of those things. Right now, the RMD age is age 73, but until you're age 73, you can just continue to just leave it there and continue to manage it however you had been, defer income from it until later. Okay. You can also withdraw, obviously. And so you can do a full withdrawal. You can roll over money to an IRA. You can take money out monthly, on demand, or you can choose the annuity. We're going to break those down here in just a minute. And then I already mentioned you can do a rollover to an IRA, manage things yourself, hire an advisor to manage it for you. You essentially have unlimited investment and or withdrawal options in an IRA. All right. So the TSP Modernization Act I mentioned once some time ago in our time together here today. President Trump signed the TSP Modernization Act into law in 2017. It provided TSP participants with more flexible withdrawal options, right? So your options are 1, and you can do installment payments. 2, you can do a partial or total distribution. Or 3, you can choose a TSP life annuity, or you can do a combination of any of those things. Right? So installment payments, just very quickly here. Your installment payments, if you were to do monthly, quarterly, or annually, means automatic withdrawals is what we're talking about. You can do a fixed dollar amount, which is an amount specified by you, the participant. Has to be a minimum of at least $25 per withdrawal. The amount may be changed along the way. And then you can also withdraw based on your life expectancy. And this is a strategy to kind of try to stretch out the money longer term versus potentially withdrawing too much, doing a fixed dollar amount every single year. But if you do withdrawals based on your life expectancy, the payments are computed by the TSP based on your life expectancy. And so it's adjusted every year depending on how much money you still have remaining in the plan, and according to what your life expectancy is each year, they'll adjust the withdrawals to kind of stretch that money out further. The amount's automatically adjusted annually. Withdrawals from the TSP, something to keep in mind is this is where it becomes a little bit cumbersome to manage things in retirement when you're taking withdrawals, because withdrawals are taken pro rata from the funds in the TSP plan. Withdrawals will be paid proportionally from each fund. And so if you have 50% in the G fund and 50% in the C fund, and you wanted to choose to only withdraw money from the G fund, because let's say the C fund is down right now in value and you want to leave that alone and let it recover, and you want to specifically withdraw from the money you have in the G fund, well, you can't do that directly. You're going to withdraw proportionally from each fund, and then you would have to go in and rebalance things yourself after each withdrawal. So that whole situation, to stay balanced according to a specific risk profile or objective in the TSP, is easier to manage when you're just using the L funds because they're automatically rebalanced, right? All right. So you can also choose the TSP life annuity. The annuity provides guaranteed income payment stream. You can use the entire or portion of your balance. It has to be at least $3,500 that you put into a TSP life annuity. And it's purchased by the TSP on your behalf with MetLife, Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Snoopy is their mascot, right? Good, stable insurance and annuity company. But you're essentially, with an annuity, you're giving up access to your lump sum. Whatever you put into the annuity, you're giving up access to the cash value in exchange for guaranteed income for the rest of your life, right? And you can choose how you receive it and stuff. There are different options that we'll talk about here. But it's set in stone. It's irreversible, right? Once it's done, it's done. There's companies that actually specialize in buying people out of their annuities. And typically you're not going to get a good deal if you're in the position of trying to sell your annuity to someone to get cash back up out of your immediate annuity. But right now they have a really good interest credit and interest factor because interest rates are high. So a lot more people have been choosing to do that these days than in years past. Okay, so amount of your annuity. The factors affecting the amount of your payment include the annuity option you choose, your age when your annuity is purchased, the amount used to purchase your annuity, just logical things here, right? And then the interest rate index when your annuity is purchased. If you purchased an annuity prior to 2022, your interest rate index was low and it's locked in place for as long as you have that annuity, right? So now is a much better time than it used to be, right? So you can choose a single life annuity with level or increasing payments, a joint life annuity with your spouse with level or increasing payments. Level income payments are going to start out higher and just stay the same forever. Increasing payments are going to start out lower and be designed to increase with the cost of living over time. Okay. You can also choose a joint life annuity with someone other than your spouse with level payments, but that individual must have an insurable interest in your situation. Here's a grid of what's available for which type of payout. Not going to spend extra time on this. Time is of the essence. Next is the subject of rollovers. So you can do a direct rollover or transfer to an IRA, which is not a taxable event. You can go traditional TSP to a traditional IRA. You can do a Roth TSP to a Roth IRA. But it's a rollover to an IRA, not a taxable event. And then you open up the world of unlimited access to withdrawals and essentially unlimited access to investment options to meet your needs. Maybe a good idea for many people. You can do all or a portion of your account value. There are more investment choices, more flexible distribution options. So you essentially have unfettered access to your money with an IRA versus the TSP plan. It's not a taxable event. All right. You can also work with a financial advisor in a fiduciary capacity. That's how we work with our members. We can help with income and cash flow planning, risk management, tax planning, all those things that we that I outlined at the beginning of our time together here today that we help with comes part and parcel with the conversation, with that relationship, all those planning aspects of it. We can implement Roth conversions. You can't do Roth conversions in the TSP plan. So a rollover to an IRA, now you can start implementing Roth conversion strategies, which really can make sense for a lot of you. Once you reach retirement, now you're in a lower tax bracket, theoretically, right? We use our tax analysis tool to identify where you are in the tax bracket situation. We start looking ahead. Is your tax bracket, your income level ever likely to change? Is this about where we're going to be steady for long term? How much room do you have to go until you break through to the next tax bracket? Should we be using up some of that tax bracket that you're currently in by doing a Roth conversion and getting money over onto the tax-free side of things? Okay, you can't do that in a TSP plan. RMD age participants, you can't do what's called a QCD, qualified charitable distribution withdrawal, directly from a TSP. So if you want to do a qualified charitable distribution once you're RMD age, in order to get a full tax deduction on a gift to a nonprofit, and still be able to take the standard deduction, you have to do that from an IRA. You can't do that straight from the TSP plan. So there are reasons there from a tax management standpoint to roll over to an IRA. It's 12:55. We're going to jump into questions here in just a second. So I'm going to fly through this. You can do an age-based in-service withdrawal. When you're over age 59 and a half, even while you're still working, you can roll over a portion, all or a portion of your TSP balance into an IRA and start implementing different investment strategies. Minimum withdrawal is $1,000. The maximum is whatever you have in the plan. And then we have the RMD distribution table based on age. We're going to skip past that for time's sake, going through the timeline of distributions when RMDs start. Essentially, your first year for your RMDs, if you're reaching age 73 right now, is you have a grace period up until tax time of the following year that you're first eligible for RMDs. Each year thereafter, you have to take it in the same calendar year, but the TSP doesn't let you miss RMDs. They'll automatically kick things out to you, but you should choose to take your RMD that first year, in most cases, prior to year end, intentionally at least address that situation for yourself to see what year, when you should take your first RMD, whether you should use that grace period or not. Sometimes there's a tax strategy around that. Okay. Reasons to work with a financial advisor. We're going to just fly right through that because I want to get to some questions here. So we'll give you a copy of the slide deck by request, and this is recorded. So without further ado, let's jump into the chat questions. I know we've had a couple already. Okay. Stuart, do you want to help moderate? Stuart, are you still there?
I'm here.
Do you want to help moderate some of these questions for us?
Sure. This first one I'm finding very interesting. So Christopher asks, please confirm that agency contributions, automatic and additions, go into traditional 401k, even if our contributions go into a Roth 401k.
Yes.
If so, we would still be taxed for all agency contributions during withdrawal, even if our Roth contributions are tax-free when we withdraw.
Yes. So the answer is yes to all of that. So agency contributions go into the traditional plan. You don't pay taxes on the agency contributions when they are made, but because it's your money, because it's money they're paying you as part of your compensation package, you can almost look at it like it's extra. It's an extra paycheck that they're writing to you, but they're putting it into your TSP plan. You're not paying taxes on it now, but when you withdraw that money in retirement, you do have to pay taxes on it, even if your 5%, if you're trying to max out the match, if yours is going into Roth, they're still putting their 5% for you into the traditional, right? So your Roth portion is tax-free withdrawals because you're not getting a tax deduction on your 5% going into that Roth. but the agency contribution is going into that traditional. So you are correct.
Okay.
And
So Christopher has a follow-up question. Also, how is earned interest taxed during withdrawals when our contributions go into a Roth and agency matching contributions go into a traditional 401k? Do they keep the earned interest separate based on the 401k type? You might have just answered that.
yeah. So you'll have two separate sections to your TSP plan. You'll have Roth, and it'll say it right there on your statement, how much you have in the Roth and how much you have in the traditional. And so it's taxed no differently. It's, the interest earned, the growth received for the traditional, you owe taxes on withdrawals in full, right? Any growth on the Roth, you won't owe any taxes on those withdrawals because they're segregated, they're separated.
Great.
Yep. And then I've got a direct message here. I just want to scan it real quick, make sure it's not something I should. Yeah, we'll follow up about that.
All right. We've
Okay.
got another one to the group. I've been trying to roll over in funds from a previous employer to the TSP for a number of months, rather unsuccessfully. One issue is I cannot roll over in an old 401k Roth. I can only move old Roth money into my TSP traditional. What better options do I have for my old 401k Roth account?
Okay. Well, you might consider me biased, but I would roll that money to a Roth IRA and have a conversation with us about how we can help you with it. But regardless, I would roll it to a Roth IRA, even if you weren't looking to work with us and have our help with it. And the reason for that is that with an IRA, you have full control over your money. Whenever you're rolling money into an employer retirement plan, that employer has some degree of control over your own money in the sense that now, and I don't imagine that they ever would, but the TSP could change up your investment options in an extreme way. There can be blackout periods when they move from one financial sponsor to another. This mostly applies to 401ks. It's really very unlikely to happen much with the TSP plan, but it still is this aspect of the employer is tied to your plan. They have some degree of authority over your money. And so I would always head the route of putting money into your greatest control, right? And that's with a Roth IRA. So that's why I would roll that old Roth 401k into a Roth IRA. But as a side note, it's surprising to me that you can't roll a Roth 401k into the Roth TSP. There's actually a concierge service that the TSP has for helping you roll over money into the plan. So it sounds like based on the way that you're talking, you've already called them and spoken with them, but there's a bit of information that sounds like we're missing there, and maybe we could talk one-off about that. Okay. Any more questions? We're reaching 102 here. Some of you may need to go. I'm going to hang out as long as anybody's got more questions, and would love to follow up with any of you one-on-one to talk about your situation. We offer a complimentary review and analysis, specific recommendations tailored to your situation. There's no cost or obligation involved. It's a time to get to know your situation, get some on-the-spot feedback, and just try to add value to your situation being a member or prospective member of the credit union. For anyone who's not a credit union, we do still offer that one-time complimentary consultation and evaluation of your situation. So we'd love to connect with any one of you, and I think you'll find it helpful. It's only going to cost you the time spent having the conversations. We can help you from there. Any of you who are still hanging around and hearing me speak at a couple minutes past the hour right now, appreciate your time and attention, but we can help you from there implement all sorts of different investment strategies, right? We'll help you even with the money that you have on deposit at the credit union. How should you properly utilize the products that are there at the credit union for you? If you have excess savings there, how should you be structuring certificates or money market? accounts, but then also how should you be structuring investments, and we can actually hands-on manage things for you and have that kind of ongoing financial advisor relationship at what actually is a very competitive cost structure for those who are actively using us for wealth management services. Again, the first conversation, that initial planning process is free, no obligation involved. But for those who are actually using us for investment management, we are very cost competitive in the industry for the value for the services that we provide. So without rambling a whole lot further, I just wanted y'all to know what we do a little bit and what we can help with for members. And here's my contact information on the screen here. Please call or send an email, preferably send an email. And something to note is most likely my assistant, Shauna Libano, is going to respond to any email that you send me for getting in touch and scheduling a time to talk. So expect a reply. If you send me an email, expect a reply from Shauna. She has the same ending or suffix to her email address as I do, and you're seeing it there on the screen. And so would love to connect with any one of you. Appreciate it. Any more questions that we have coming in there?
No, I think that covers everything. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been great. Hope it was informative, folks. Stuart, really appreciate you for the intro and helping us moderate today. Take care, everyone.